The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Today we're going to talk about Butsudanandai, the 8th ancestor. And as usual, we have the little exchange at the beginning with his teacher. Upon meeting Bashumitsu, Butsudanandai said, "My reason for coming here today is to debate with you as to what truth is." Bashumitsu responded, "Good sir, when there is a debate, then there is no truth. When there is truth, then there is nothing to debate. If you propose to debate as to what truth is, then there cannot be a debate." Realizing that Bashumitsu's truth had bested him, Butsudanandai awoke to the principle of the unborn. Reverend Master used to say many times, when there's argument, it is not about the truth. There cannot be argument about the real truth. And this chapter is what she was quoting. The real truth is not a matter of argument or debate and opinions. It's far beyond all that. And Keizan's constantly pointing this out. Any kind of debate is limited by our own views and the words we use, regardless of what we may think or any experience we may have had. Debate and argument has nothing to do with the real truth. It's not a matter of debate or winning an argument or looking good. And sometimes people get into argument about what's true or what's real, and somehow you end up missing the point. As Great Master Keizan says, real truth is not debatable, and genuine debate is not concerned with truth. Therefore, if you attempt to debate as to what truth is, you end up with neither truth nor debate. The intellectual mind that tries to figure it all out. Here in the West we do this a lot, but actually I think it's a general human tendency to try to figure things out. Buddhism is fairly new in the West, so we're still trying to understand it, really, many of us. We don't yet have that basis of faith in general, that people do have been raised in a Buddhist society, and that has its own problems. But that basis of faith, when you're just raised in the Dharma, most of us don't have that yet. So we try to figure it out. That's what we're used to doing. We turn to books to help us. And many people look to Western philosophy and psychology to give them a Western perspective on Buddhism. But these are limited by the all-pervading idea of a self, which of course goes right by us in a sense. We take it for granted that of course there's a self until we have trained for a while. And that's why Western philosophy and psychology tend to fall short of what the Dharma teaches us. Because as Great Master Keizan is constantly telling us, the Dharma goes beyond self. It's much bigger. And it doesn't really lend itself to intellectual debate. We have to understand it for ourselves, taste it for ourselves. It's not a matter of convincing somebody or figuring it out. Keizan says the Buddha did not debate about things and express opinions. He expressed the truth. He wasn't arguing. He expressed the truth. This had nothing to do with opinions. He says, even though the Buddha taught that original nature and the phenomenal world are not two separate things, This teaching is not his debating about reality, it is his teaching. Although he taught that true nature is what is real, and original nature is what is absolute, this is not debating, it's just teaching us what is real. The Buddha is telling us what is real and true. It's got nothing to do with views and opinions, it's a matter of experience. This is what Keizan is trying to point out to us in this chapter. It's nothing to do with winning an argument, having a view. And now he says, none of us really completely knows Buddha nature until we become a Buddha. We may catch a glimpse of it now and then, but we're not certain and we don't know it fully. He says even Vimalakirti and Manjusri in the Vimalakirti Sutra weren't able to talk about it. And the Buddha's foremost disciples, Shariputra and Moggallana, did not know Buddha nature, he says. As the Buddha says, a Buddha nature such as this, only a Buddha can know. Keizan quotes from the Nirvana scripture when the Buddha is talking about this whole matter. And the Buddha gives an analogy of somebody out in the desert looking for water, really parched with thirst, trying to find water. And he sees a white crane in a clump of bushes, and he thinks he sees water. And then finally realizes, indeed, a crane in a clump of bushes. And the Buddha says, O good disciples, any bodhisattva in the 10 abiding places of wisdom, i.e. advanced bodhisattvas in the 10 stages, who catches a glimpse of the Tathagata's nature and thereby has some knowledge of it, is just like this man. They're not quite sure what they've seen. And he explains, bodhisattvas in the 10 abodes are still not completely certain that they have seen Buddha nature. So no matter what we may have seen or experienced of Buddha nature for ourselves, don't think we've seen it completely. Don't think we have the whole story. Even deeply realized bodhisattvas are not completely sure they've seen it, says the Buddha. And Keizan again quotes the Buddha, even though bodhisattvas in the 10 abodes have seen the Tathagata's nature within their own being, again, it's still not absolutely clear to them that they have done so. And then finally the Buddha explains to the bodhisattvas, and they begin to understand and see for themselves. And they realize that their confusion has been due to their bewilderment and delusion about that which is beyond self, beyond their own being. And this is the important thing, it's beyond the self, beyond finding it in themselves. Although they are within the 10 abodes, they still cannot see the Buddha nature in all respects. Once the Tathagata has explained the matter, they're able to see a little of it. Once they succeed in seeing it, then they exclaim with deep and selfless feeling, how exceedingly wondrous it is, O world-honored one! We have undergone untold births and deaths, constantly bewildered about that which lies beyond self. And this is the important part. It lies beyond self. It's not just seeing Buddha nature in our own little being, but seeing it's beyond me and my little being. We are all just a part of it. And, as Rav Masi used to say, a glimpse of Buddha nature is still a seeing of Buddha nature. And we do know it to be real. But just don't think we've seen the whole of it, or that we know it fully. There is always more. As she would say, beware of the certainty. If we're certain we know Buddha nature, then we get stuck with what we think we know. We're trying to grasp onto it and hold it in our hand, and we lose it. But if we're not sure, if we're not quite sure of how much we've seen or how profound our seeing is, then we're open to more. There is always more than we can know. We may have deep insights, and this is very helpful, but it's probably not the great enlightenment. There's always more to see, there's always further to go. The man in the desert thinks he sees water, but he's seen a crane. A crane is a good omen, but it's not water. He has to go further to find the real water. Keizan says, don't get stuck with views, our views about existence and birth and death. Do not conceive of existence as a sham or as a reality, as something that's completely false, deluded, or as something that's completely real. If you do, this is false through and through. Do things exist or do they not exist? Is there a self or is there not a self? Well, it's not that simple, it seems, and the Buddha himself talked about this. It's yes and no. You can't pin it all down. It's beyond our little brain to understand. Is there a self? Is there not a self? In the way there is, in the way there's not. Do all these things we see exist or not? Some people say they do, some people say they don't. The Buddha says yes and no. Don't get stuck with ideas or views or what we may have experienced or not experienced, because there's always more, there's always further to go. And Keizan says, it is imperative that you resolve this prime matter by penetrating deeply into it through meditation. It's not a matter of thinking about it or having opinions about it. It's a matter of realizing it for oneself. And there is always further to go. Great Master Tozan, our ancestor, one of the founders of the Soto tradition, had a deep realization. But this wasn't enough for his master, who told him to go on further. And finally, as he was traveling, he was crossing a river and he sees his reflection in the water. And he realizes the truth fully for himself. And he composed this beautiful poem, which we well know, or is well known. Truly I should not seek for the truth from others, for then it will be far from me. Now I am going alone. Everywhere I am able to meet him. He is me now, I am not him. When we understand this, we are instantaneously with the truth. And Great Master Tozan was the one who wrote the most excellent Mirror Samadhi, in which it says, you are not him, he is all of you. This is where it is from. It's exactly that. And Keizan says that before he has his realization, although he'd said he'd come to realize that everything in the three worlds preaches the Dharma, there was still that place which he had not yet reached, and so he was urged on by his master Ungan. Now what about us? Most of us would be only too happy to understand as much as Tozan first understood. We'd be happy with that. But we need to keep going on. And how will we know if and when we do understand fully? Will we always be not quite sure? Or will we completely know and understand? Maybe we will know, maybe we won't. But we always need to keep going on. Always going on beyond. Always becoming Buddha. I don't think we're going to need to worry about whether we're completely enlightened or not. I think it'll all be fine. And we just keep going on and not try to grasp something, to get enlightenment, or to get something we can hold on to and have absolute certainty. Because that's when you can lose something. We fossilized it. There's a saying, always we should be disturbed by the truth. We always need to keep on training. We always need to be aware that there's more to do. Always more to do, further to go. To be aware of complacency or just coasting along comfortably. We need to keep on seeing our shortcomings, our failures to keep to the precepts, our selfishness, in big ways and in little ways. It's a constant endeavor, not to get disheartened because our imperfections don't all go away. They may never go away. We always have to work on them. We just keep on seeing them and working on them. And they do reduce, they do get better. And sometimes something does go away completely. But very often we just have to keep on working at the same old thing over and over again. This is our daily work. This is how we work on the selfishness in whatever form it comes up for us. Our own self-view. It's not a problem. It's just what we have to work with. Keizan goes on. People today comprehend through their personal opinions and views that the mind is Buddha or the body is Buddha, whilst failing to grasp what the way of the Buddha is. From the Venerable Shakyamuni down through the ancestors and masters and those since, there's been no distinction of rank among the Buddhas and ancestors. Which of them did not have a great awakening to his true self? If every one of them had understood what the truth is, merely by relying on the written word, or considered the truth to be a matter for debate, how many Buddhas and ancestors would there have been? There would have been millions of them. If you discard such notions and train yourself to penetrate to that place that Tozan reached, you will quite naturally succeed in becoming one of the Buddhas and ancestors. Discard such notions, discard all the opinions and views. Discard our own views about ourselves, what we can and can't do, what we have and haven't seen. And train ourselves to penetrate to that place. We will quite naturally succeed in becoming one of the Buddhas and ancestors. It's for us. And now Keizan goes on. Above all, if you do not awaken to your true self and pierce through to the way of the Buddhas and ancestors, you will not be a real person. Hence, do not abide in absolute purity or in the bright clarity of the immaculacy of emptiness. Don't get stuck with ideas of purity. Don't get stuck with ideas about emptiness. Keep going. There's always more. This is why Reverend Monk Sensu said, there is a place that has no whereabouts in which to store oneself, no place to stay. And do not store a self in that place which has no whereabouts. No matter how far you may seem to have gone, don't store a self there. As Reverend Master said, don't get stuck by the lake of quietism. Don't get stuck anywhere. Just keep on going no matter what. Keep on going, there's always more to do. The monk continues, for 30 years I stayed on Medicine Mountain and was clear only about this one thing. Absolute purity is indeed not a place in which to store yourself. It's not a place to get stuck with. Although you may say that you have transcended both the mind and the objects it lights upon, still, as Sensu said, do not store yourself in such a place. Don't abide anywhere. Ajahn Chah said this. Do not abide anywhere. Keep on going. The way of the Buddha is constantly flowing. Buddha nature is constantly flowing. You cannot store yourself. Abide in such a place. You have to keep going. Otherwise you lose it. You lose a life of that. To keep on moving with it, in accord with it. It's a flow. It's not a static thing that you get and you've fossilized it and there it is. If you try to grasp it, you've lost it. And Keizan says, to reiterate, there is no need to argue over things past and present, or debate about delusion and enlightenment. When, through meditation, you have penetrated to it, there are no walls in all the 10 directions, in all the 10 quarters to fall down, no barrier gates in any direction. Everywhere, It is stripped bare and as pure as a dewdrop. Therefore, act with the utmost care and do not be precipitous. Don't rush to judgment. Don't get into arguments or about training or about anything else, whether outwardly or in our own mind. It's just setting up opposites. This is right, that is wrong. My view is the right view, or my view is the wrong view. Argument. Trying to have the last word. Trying to win our point. Trying to look good, not to lose face. Sometimes at the expense of somebody else. It's surprising how often we do this. Often without even realizing what it is we're doing. Just trying to win our point, or trying to get the last word in. Yes, that may be so, but my view is really here. This is the right view, really. This is just being a self. It's got nothing to do with truth. Argument, trying to prove our point. Apologizing for something and then saying, well, actually, I was justified. That's not really an apology. We apologize wholeheartedly. If you had a glimpse of truth, there can be spiritual pride. We can think, I've had an understanding of truth. Well, maybe we have, but what are we doing right now? What are we doing about our self-centered views? That's what matters, not what we've seen or understood. Helpful though that may be. Having had a glimpse of truth is not something to identify with, to claim as mine. Otherwise, we're completely missing the point. As Kazan says, truth is that which lies beyond self, beyond me, beyond what I understand, beyond my views about something, beyond my experience. That's why we're not completely sure. Have we seen the truth? Have we seen the whole of it? We might have had a glimpse. Yes. And there's always more. We cannot hold on to something and fossilize it as reality. Otherwise, we've lost it. Constantly, it flows on. Don't compare ourselves with other people. I'm doing better than that person. Or, that wasn't a very wise remark. I wouldn't have said that. Or, I'm worse than other people. My training isn't as good as other people's. My meditation is poor. I don't know anything. In a way, it's just the same as thinking we know everything and we're better than other people. It's just an opinion. Comparing ourselves with others, it's limited. It's me versus somebody else. And it's deluded because there's a me there. And the real truth is beyond self. That which lies beyond self. And as Kazan says, there are no walls to fall down, no barrier gates in any direction. Buddha nature is limitless, training is limitless. It's far beyond our little self, our little views and opinions, our little experience or non-experience, what we think of ourselves or others. Far beyond judgment, comparing, argument. We can abandon our little rivulet and entrust ourselves to the great ocean of Buddha nature. And he concludes, this morning I have some humble words that attempt to break open what is happening in this story. Do you wish to hear them? Subhuti and Vimalakirti did not reach it through their conversations, and Moggallana and Shariputra saw it as though blind. If anyone personally wishes to understand the meaning of this, when will a pinch of salt to season the experience not be suitable? The pinch of salt, what does it mean? Salt is something one tastes for oneself. We experience truth for ourselves. Salt is the taste of the great ocean. Brahmasujiva's version of this verse says, salt is suitable for all food, Everything has the flavor of Buddha nature when we taste it for ourselves. The true humility, beyond all ideas of me and other people, not setting ourselves up, not comparing ourselves with others, getting into debates about truth, standing against another person, being a self, but remaining open to the real truth, which is much greater than we are, much greater than our experience, however profound that may be. Relinquishing this little separate me, entrusting ourselves to the great matter, the great ocean of Buddha nature, pledging ourselves to the real truth. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom. Tomorrow we'll talk about Shayata.